We are here today to play Polaris by Ben Lehman, which came out in 2005. And we getting into the concept of the game, I would say that there are conceptually two anchoring pieces for the game. One is a setting. The subtitle of the game is Chivalric Tragedy at the Utmost North. And so the game kind of conceives a kind of northern kingdom that has, who knows how long this kingdom has existed, but things have recently occurred to change things for this kingdom. Most notably, the appearance of the sun on the horizon. There was a sense that for eons, perhaps, there was no sun that the people of Polaris saw. So it was simply a starry sky and darkness that they were living in, and that recently, over the horizon, the sun has made an appearance, and the society has become somewhat decadent, and the society is having kind of difficulties kind of thinking about its future, and actually has had to start thinking about time. The kind of backdrop of the game is that when the sun appears, they first get this idea of inventing a calendar, and this idea that time exists, and that their own lives may not be perpetual, but that things can happen which would lead them and their society into some type of decline is something that they're having to deal with. And then, aside from the setting, the game conceptually is rooted in a mechanic that helps us to resolve conflicts. The game wants the players to kind of push the protagonists into conflict situations, and the game has a resolution system that is driven by key phrases. And so when you get involved in a scene where there is conflict, there is a set of phrases that can be used to kind of turn the tide in various directions. And some of the phrases can be used. There are rules guiding like how the phrases can be used, and also rules guiding what the impact of those phrases will be. But we'll get into that aspect as we go along. The aim of the session today is primarily going to be to create the protagonists for this game, and kind of build out some of the key relationships that the protagonists have, kind of find out a little bit more about this world that they are now inhabiting, and also talk a little bit about the rules and how the key phrases work, and how the conflict resolution system operates. If depending on the time, we may get into playing out some initial scenes, but we'll just have to see how things go. And there's it strikes me that there's going to be a little bit to wrap our heads around as the kind of protagonists and the relationships get created. And so I'm if we have the time to kind of play out some initial scenes, that is fine. But I'm also going to be happy to have a week to kind of percolate on some of the ideas that we come up with, and so that the next session will be kind of ready to go into the play full on. The tone of the game, I've kind of in my notes written down three key aspects of the tone. One would be a kind of high fantasy idea that there's an idea that the protagonists are all going to be knights, and that's Knights, but knights living in this society, and that there are definitely demons roaming about in this world right now, and there are kinds of problems that knights will be needing to confront. The other thing I wrote down, the second thing, was tragedy. Is that the game is kind of set up so that as the play goes along, the situation will become more and more desperate. So that, for example, one of the attributes that the knights have is zeal, which is automatically set at the number 4. Zeal, as the game goes along, will decline. And when it finally drops to 0, you lose your zeal. And then it has another attribute called weariness, which starts at 0. But once the zeal goes to 0, weariness goes to 1, and then weariness will increase in the course of the game. Right. So that there's definitely this idea that as play goes along, the protagonist knights will lose their zeal and then gain more and more weariness as things develop. And then the last thing I wrote down undertone was decadence. There's this idea that this society that is here at the utmost north is a somewhat decadent society. It does strike me in terms of if we were going to give the game a rating, when I was reading the rules, I was thinking of the old movie Excalibur. I was also thinking of the Game of Thrones. But in terms of a kind of TV or movie rating, I think in my mind, it's going to be PG-13, and R is kind of where the game would kind of situate itself, because there's going to be, certainly I would expect some violent confrontations that would be happening between knights and demons, and then there's also going to be all sorts of potential courtly intrigue that will be happening as well. And in terms of just getting a little bit more into the subject matter, I have a shared folder, which you should all have access to, and I will also make it in here, and I can provide you the link to this. And I'll drop this in the chat. Okay, so that's the shared folder, and within that folder, there is a document. It's the Gauntlet Polaris protagonist record sheet, and I think you all are already there. So if you go to the final page of that sheet, I have a crude map there, which the idea is that with the rising of the sun and the kind of awareness of the sun and also the moon, along with that, at the kind of center of this empire, there is this area called the Mistake. And that's kind of at the center of the map. We might assume that is almost directly at the kind of North Pole. And out of the Mistake, at least the rumors are that is where various demons have been kind of spawning or entering into the world. And the sense of these demons is that some of them are kind of awful flesh and bone demons, which kind of just present to you a physical challenge. But there are also more subtle demons as well, types of demons that might not be visually noticed, but may come to possess or influence people as well. Okay, and then there are 4 what are called remnants. These would have been previously great and majestic cities, and they are still there, but they are clearly on the decline. And the names of those cities are Southwatch, Tall Star, South Keep, and South Reach. Okay, so that's a kind of general sense of the map. And I think what I'm going to try to do is, even though this is not part of the rules, I think during some of the character creation and world building, I'd like to maybe add a few other maybe key locations within the map, whether they be locations within some of the remnants, or perhaps locations around the mistake, or elsewhere. Oh, and
there are easy ways of doing that. You can, like particularly Office and Fate, you can add in big additions to the fiction.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, when we get into some of the character creation, it may be that some of the things we're adding to the characters would kind of trigger us to think, oh, that this would be there would be a location associated with this. I should also point out that on the periphery of this map, we would have the South, and the idea is that we are also becoming aware that there are people and civilizations off to the south, and those people or those civilizations may enter into the play as well. Oh, and also, just to kind of establish a bit about the setting, Ben Lehman does suggest reading at the beginning of the game. Well, he suggests 2 things at the beginning of the game. One is a key phrase, and so I'm going to go on and say that key phrase in a second here. But also, he suggests reading the moments frozen from the flow of time. And so I have that page on the shared folder if you would like to open that up. And maybe the way that we'll do this is I'll say the key phrase that opens up the game, and then I'll read the beginning of this moments frozen from the flow of time. But when we get to the bullet points, maybe we can just alternate the reading of those. Okay. So here's the key phrase that opens up a game session. Long ago, the people were dying at the end of the world. And now moving to the moments frozen from the flow of time, it says, once upon a time, as far north as north can go, there lived the greatest people that this world will ever know. We cannot look upon them as they were, but we can understand them as they die, melting like a snowflake in the sun. For those people are gone now, destroyed just as the world destroys all beautiful things. All that remains are these moments we call memories, moments frozen from the flow of time. Behold. And Brandon, if you'll read the first.
Sure. A beautiful girl, alone in a waste of ice, stares at a glowing starlit city. Her face is expressionless, but the snow falling from her lips betrays her envy.
Okay, and Kieran?
His blood drips from an alien flower that he cannot bear to hold, while his sister cradles her own hand and waits, not quite crying, for the knife.
In such a blizzard, you could only see them by the light of their swords.
With a single gesture and a single note from her single song, the flesh tears off the corrupt senators, exposing the worms squirming beneath.
Dancing thick on an icicle floor, 1,000 couples stop in time, staring through a rainbow glass at the glowing edge of dawn just appearing on the horizon.
Enraptured, he does not see its claws.
Swords clash at the edge of a glacial ravine, one pale and singing like starlight, one hot and burning like the sun. Our knight looks up into his opponent's frozen and fiery eyes to recognize his brother.
In a crypt of sleeping nights, she leans over a fallen warrior, betrayed by his own compatriots. Hush, she whispers, and kisses him gently as he turns to ice.
With only a moment's hesitation, she drives her sword into her lover's heart. "Forgive me," he says, and toasts her as he dies.
This is no longer a history. This is not yet a story. This is all that remains. Whatever else is what you make of it. All right, that's I think a nice set of images and very kind of atmospheric and kind of put you in, I think, the kind of mindset that Ben Lehman has in mind. I want to talk a little bit about safety, and for this, I also have a page. This would be page 5 of the Jamboard. We will be abiding by the Gauntlet Code of Conduct for this game. And we will be using a number of safety tools to make sure that the game stays fun and safe for everybody involved. First off is the X card. And with the X card, you can, since we're not at a physical table, you can either type X card in the chat, you can hold your arms in front of you in the form of an X, or just say X card, and that will immediately stop the play, and we will maybe take a step backwards and take a new direction. There's no need to justify why you are using the X card. The only question that might be asked would be something that would allow us, if there's some confusion as to what it is that we need to be avoiding, we might ask that, but otherwise we'll kind of stop and take things in a different direction. We'll also be using lines and veils, and I have written up here the lines and veils, and I would ask you if there are, so a line would be topics, subjects that you do not want to see in play, and we'll draw a line, put those as a line, and we'll each session remind ourselves of what these lines are. A veil would be topics or subjects which would be okay to mention in play, but which we will just mention. They won't be kind of described or dwelt upon. To some extent, you could think about these being things that we mentioned that are kind of off stage, or they get mentioned and we kind of then fade to black. So let me give you a minute now, if you would like. Hopefully you're able to kind of type in, and if you haven't used this before, there is on the left hand side a text box, and you can, to add something to the line or the veil, probably the best way to do that would be just to type in create a text box and put it under the line or the veil. And you know, as we type those in, I would also say that you know, lines and veils, it's not like we do this once and we can't add to them afterwards. At any point, you should feel free to, if there's something that hasn't come up or that you haven't thought about, but that it starts coming up in play, and you kind of realize, oh, that really should be something that we veil, or that should be something that we should draw a line at. You should always feel free to let us know, or to type in there, and we can kind of continue to add to this as things go along. And as that's continuing to go on, one last important safety tool that I would mention is the open table policy. So if at any point you need to leave the table, emergencies happen, and or that it just may be that there's something going on in the play that really is making the experience not pleasurable for you. You know, you should always feel free to take that open table policy. Now, I was kind of thinking to myself that you know, the open table policy, I've seen used a number of times. I myself have used it on a few occasions, and it's always nice to kind of know that, you know, that's explicitly there, as you know, you're not forced to remain at the table if circumstances or you know, situations arise. Okay. Go. And then if you're finished with the lines and veils yourself, if you'll just in the chat just type okay, just so that I know. Okay. All right, and so we have a line drawn on sexual assault, so there will not be any sexual assault in the game, and we have veils drawn with explicit torture, sex, and violence towards children. So again, those would be things that could be mentioned, but they would not be dwelt upon, and would remain kind of off stage in the game. I would also ask, yeah, this is a GM-less or GM-full game, and I try to always remind myself of, like, the lines and the veils. If something is happening though, and I haven't kind of caught on that, oh, right, we're approaching a line, or maybe I'm looking somewhere else and somebody else is using the X card, but I haven't noticed it, please, you know, everybody should be on board for the safety tools, and, you know, kind of alert us when a safety tool is coming into play. That would be useful for me and for everybody. Okay, so let's see how we're doing. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about then creating protagonists and the cosmos. And if you go back to one of the earlier pages on the Jamboard, we're going to be using this to create our characters. And so if everybody wants to just in those first 4 pages, everybody can claim one of those pages where it says player name and pronoun at the top. If you will just take one of those that doesn't currently have somebody else's name there, and put your name up there at the top. I will do the same.
Also, I know we should be Knight of the Order of the Stars.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had the sun. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the demons, I guess. That would be
Yeah.
yeah. So go down. That was my mistake. Yeah, you should double click where it says under the office the Order of the Sun. It should be the Order of the Stars. Change that one. All right. So. Here. Okay. Let me explain these different things that are appearing in the Jamboard. So every player is going to be playing a different protagonist. Okay. And the term that the game uses is that they'll say, okay, the game has usually the same number of protagonists as there are players, and each protagonist then has a number of what it calls guides. Okay, and the different players at the table will be taking up responsibility for being different types of guides for the different protagonists. So to clarify what this means is, like when I look at my sheet, I'm going to come up with a knight, and I will put that name where the heart name is. And then my knight, or my protagonist who I am playing, there is going to be at least one character listed under the mistaken. And we would, I think, using kind of literary terminology, we would think about the mistaken as being a kind of antagonist. It could be a human. I think a lot of times the mistaken ends up being a demon of some type, but it would be a character who would be definitely opposed to my knight. And there will then be another player who is assigned the role of playing the mistaken. And more widely, another player at the table who has, right, the kind of jurisdiction over the mistaken on my sheet is there to kind of think of ways of creating conflict for my knight. Okay, so that becomes a kind of a secondary role that you will have. Okay, so you'll have your own protagonist that you're going to be playing, but then on somebody else's sheet, you will be taking on the role of the mistaken for that player, and you'll need to be kind of thinking about ways of bringing conflict into that other player's knight's story. Okay, and then you also have the full moon, and there should be at least one character listed under the full moon area. The full moon is the social and hierarchical relationships that the knight has. Okay, so it may be maybe a political relationship, or could be some type of employment relationship, but something in that kind of social arena is what we're thinking about with the full moon. And as I say, there will be at least one character listed there. And then we also have the new moon, and the new moon would be personal and interpersonal relationships that this character has. So it could be a romantic relationship. It could be a familial relationship. It could just, it could be a kind of relationship of close friendship or something like that. Okay, that would be in the new moon. And so when you're creating your character, you're going to have listed beneath each of those areas at least one character. You don't need at the beginning here, you don't need to have that mistaken character or full moon character fully fleshed out. I mean, it may just be an evocative name. Oh, and I should point out that when it comes to characters, I think demons could be a little different than this, but in terms of the human characters, the game wants you to choose as names the names of stars or constellations, and so I have in our shared folder, I have Polaris names, where he has provided a kind of list of various star names and constellation names. Okay. Okay, so below the heart, we have zeal, ice, light, and weariness, and those values are preset. So everybody has a preset value of 4 for zeal. As I say, that number will, in the course of play, decline, and when it hits rock bottom, then your weariness number will increase. The ice and light values start at 1. Those will increase in the course of play. The ice value is associated with the social dimension, and the light value is associated with kind of internal the kind of internal dimension. So that if you had like a high ice value and you were trying to accomplish something that definitely had some type of more societal impact, that would come into play. If you are, however, maybe by yourself, and it really was a much more kind of personal conflict that you were engaged in, then in that situation, the light value would come into play. Okay. And then going to these last items, you have what Ben Lehman calls themes: office, fate, blessing, and abilities. And for every protagonist, 3 of these are preset. Okay, so the office theme has to do with maybe groups that you have some type of official membership in that group. Everybody has at the beginning this idea of being a knight of the Order of Stars. Okay. But there may be different other orders, or there may be suborders within the orders of stars, or your protagonist may be maybe they hold some type of position in a court or in some type of an organization, and so all those types of things would be listed under office. Okay. I'm going to skip fate for a second and just move on to blessings. So blessings are artifacts, equipment, and they can also be companions who assist you, especially in your battle against demons or against enemies. Okay, so everybody automatically starts off with a piece of equipment, which is a starlight sword. Okay. But you can add other pieces of equipment or artifacts or companions, like the rule book, as one of its examples talks about, maybe somebody wants to have a a steed that they can ride around in, right? A kind of battle steed. And so that could be listed as a blessing. And then finally, you have the abilities, and abilities are lores, techniques, or skills that your knight possesses. And everybody starts off with the lore of demons, but you have, other types of lores, aspects of knowledge, areas of knowledge. You maybe have special skills that you would add to the abilities. And then going back to fate, the fate is not, it doesn't, like with these other themes, there's not one that is given in advance, but it does say that we have to collectively decide on a fate that all 4 of our knights share. Okay. And a fate could be an idea, it could be an event, it could be a relationship. Let me go to what it says. I can describe a little bit more clearly what fate is.
And to clarify, the way that aspects work in this game is that they are basically a lot like aspects in Fate, in that they're things that will get tagged over the course of play. So they're things that could either help you in some, that can both help you in some way, but the mistaken might also tag them to like reveal their downsides. Like maybe if you had the loyal steed Shackleton, maybe they get injured, maybe they get frightened by a demon. Those are ways the mistaken might tag it to have it work against you.
Right. And there are like some of these key phrases, which in order to use the key phrase, you may have to point to one of these aspects and say and justify how that aspect would come into play in this encounter. And if the players agree that, oh yeah, that makes sense, that would come into play, then you would be allowed to use that aspect. But it also happens that once you've used an aspect, it gets marked as being used by you, and you're not able to use it again until there's a mechanic which allows it to be refreshed. But like you can't, like if I use my Starlight Sword, it may work very well in one conflict, but if it hasn't been refreshed in the next conflict I'm encountering, I may not be able to use the Starlight Sword again in the same way. Okay. And the aspects are there both for the knight as well as the mistaken to use, so that there may be some things that you see here that look really valuable to your knight, but whoever is playing the mistaken for your knight might be looking upon those as things that they could actually use to make your life more complicated. Okay. Yeah, and just I felt like I wasn't doing a great job describing what the fate was. It says in the rule book, the fate theme describes those things external to the knight that will be important to the knight's story. Okay. Aspects are specific people, demons, events, or ideas that are tied strongly into the knight's history, reputation, or destiny. And it says there is no specific required fate aspect for all protagonists, but the players must decide on a fate aspect that the protagonists all share. Okay. And so we'll need to kind of talk about that collectively together. It also says at the beginning that you should go on and with the office fate, blessing, and abilities area, you should go on and identify 2 more aspects. Not 2 for each one, but like you may think of another blessing, that you would like to have, or another ability, whether it be a lore or a technique or a skill that would be kind of special for your night. Okay. And so, yeah, but between those four themes, yeah, you should go on and come up with 2 additional aspects. As I say, not 2 for each one, but 2 that you would add to that area.
And I see that I should know, Robbie, you do have in, Robbie has put in the shared file Polaris aspects 2, which offers the examples from the book of aspects.
Right. Yeah. So you should, yeah, feel free to kind of peruse that and draw something from one of those. Or if you have some other idea, something that isn't there, but that seems like it would be cool for what this game is about, you should feel free to add that.
I think I have some ideas. So
Okay.
I'll toss those out whenever it's appropriate.
So I'm wondering if at this point, I'm thinking maybe we'll take a lengthy break, and people can kind of start to think about this and add to the Jamboard. But we could also use it as a, if we want to get refreshments or a bio break. Stephen, I'm gonna lean on you for this. Like, how long of a break do you think would be good at this point, just in terms of both needing a break ourselves, but also kind of, filling out some aspects of the Jamboard?
I mean, if I guess it depends. Like for me, like when we were filling out the cosmos, there was a lot of interplay between players where like my half sister was also a demonic general and the lover of another player character.
Mm-hmm.
So like that there was like a lot of kind of interchange between each other's cosmos boards because you're not limited to putting one character. It's at least
Correct.
one in each.
Correct.
Yeah, and I like having a lot of linkages.
Okay, well, if that sounds good to me. Why don't we say 15 minutes and we can take a break, walk around a little bit, maybe, if you want to kind of percolate on some ideas, but we could come back at, it would be roughly 10 past the top of the hour, and we can start talking about some of our ideas then. I hadn't really myself, I'll just kind of give a couple of ideas that came to my mind. I hadn't really come up with any characters yet for Full Moon, New Moon, and Mistaken. But I did have this idea of for an added office being a member of the Sentinels of the Southern Lands. So, we've become aware that there are actually many different peoples and nations off to the south. Largely, we just hear rumors of them, but we have a kind of growing awareness that in addition to the Mistaken, that we have also those new peoples as well. And it was kind of like striking me that, well, maybe the the people of this northern land would see fit to create some sentinels to kind of keep track and to find out a little bit more about those southern people.
Okay, because I actually did myself for my character mark down an office of a foreigner, but it said the matriarch of the Aquilay wedded a stranger some generations past. And that might have been a long time ago, but the Aquilay have been branded as foreigners ever since then.
I used the same name in one of my things, so I think we might capitalize on that happy accident.
Oh, so okay. So just so that I understand, so the Aquilay, Stephen, as you're conceiving of it, is that's the name of a family.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember. Okay, that sounds cool.
And the
The
office aspect can also represent things like social status as well. Like there are things like exile and champion there among besides like more official titles.
Right. Right.
um,
Yeah.
Did you
so
have another thought? Any other thoughts, Robbie? And for your
Well, I guess one question I had in mind was, you go back to the map and there are 4 remnants. We who knows how far apart those remnants are, but would we want to imagine our knights as all belonging to the same remnant with the same
I
city,
mean,
or does that?
we could certainly throw that out as a shared fate relating to that.
Hmm.
sure. So the concept that I had, and as I said, I happen to use Aquila um, as the name of the father is that of a religious order named the Sons of the Morning, or the Sons of the Morning Star, who have been predicting the advent of the light from the south, since time immemorial, and believe it to be a beacon of either literal or figurative towards redemption. And my character is the daughter of the morning, and the as I said, the the name that I just grabbed out of the bag as the leader of the Sons of the Morning was Aquila. That could well not be an accident, and it might be that the same an individual from the family, from Stephen's family, or even the same person who just said to marry a foreigner, if in fact that happened in recent times rather than in the historic past, or a descendant thereof, if
Yeah,
happened further back.
I guess fictionally, I don't necessarily want my family to be full on sun cultists because I feel like that sort of goes against the tension I wanted to set up with that aspect. So I might just change up the name of my family then.
Well, no, I can change it. It's just I'm perfectly happy to have a different name. It's just something I picked, and I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it's
I
just
picked the
I
same name.
feel like this is the tension I was trying to set up here is that like effectively they're being held foreigners for a trace of like southern lineage going back generations back.
Sure. Okay.
Okay,
I'll
so
just change it.
I have a couple questions, one for Brandon and one for Stephen. So Brandon, this religious order, um, would that order be viewed as, I mean, are they viewed with suspicion by the rest of the society? Like how would like your typical person from this civilization look upon that religious order? Is it something dangerous? Is there something um you know I mean, are they viewed as being unreasonable or just weird, or is it mainstream, or
They're mystics, and so they're going to be viewed. They're not mainstream. Um, they are viewed by most people as being strange, by some people as being dangerous, and by a few people as basically having having deep mystic truths that that are not known to the general.
Okay.
You might view them like as the Gnostic Christians were viewed. The knowledge is not perfect in my mind, but it partakes a little bit.
Okay. And Stephen, with the family that you are a part of, is I mean, there are obviously rumors about, right, that this kind of connection that they have to people from the South. I mean, is there anything in terms of the way the members of this family look, or their maybe customs or practices or anything else that the other people from Polaris would kind of point to that and saying, that is clearly some indication that there's something Southern in this family?
Yeah, I guess. However, skin tones there are in this Polaris, that there's always a kind of pallor to anyone born of Polaris. But there's always a trace of sun-warmed glow about the Aquilay.
Okay.
I also was thinking, as my other blessing, is that there is an ancestral compass, which is, I think, in Polaris viewed as a bit of a cursed thing, because as I noted, it's a thing that always points into the heart of the mistake.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Okay. I mean, the only other thing I had initially put up here, but I may change it, but it had as one of the abilities, it seems rather blunt, but it just had big, right? That the people of Polaris are known as being kind of thin and rather wispy people, and with almost, it seems like their skin is sometimes even almost transparent, but that the big attribute kind of sets me apart, right? That and I think maybe known for my brawn, and maybe that's partly why I was pointed to as somebody who would become part of the Sentinel for the Southern lands, is because the rumor is that those people are larger than we are, or more burly than we are, and that I have just physically, my knight has this physical, I seem physically imposing to the other most of the other people of Polaris.
And actually, I'm actually thinking about it. I'm fine, Brandon, if you want to say that Aquila claims to be like my ancestor reborn. Like that's cool with me.
Okay, well,
I
let me
just
think
kind of
about
wanted
that.
to separate out that I don't think my family is officially tied to it. But
No,
I'm fine,
although I think the Sons of the Morning have a very different view of Southerners than the mainstream, because they were touched by the morning light first. And that doesn't mean that they're all special people, but it means that something about them is special, that there is an essence to them, or some sort of ancient blessing, that they were deemed worthy to see the light first. Maybe they didn't understand what they were seeing, but it means that they're definitionally not, that the cult has an interest in them, and not the automatic suspicion that the society at large has. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like just a separate kind of fetishization of them, like that. Yes, clearly they're on a pedestal rather than monsters.
Yes, exactly right. Yes, that they're still not like regular people. But it's it's a bone of it's just a great bone of contention, right, between the Sons of the Morning and the rest of society. It's like yet another thing they disagree on.
So I don't know if Kieran, do you have any thoughts on your character? Because I had a thought on a shared fate, but I wanted to get a sense of. I wanted to hear that from you first.
I was about to. I must admit, the shared fate aspect is the thing that's kind of stopped me. Actually, I also put something down now because I've had. I did have a few ideas, and I sort of boiled one down to a sentence. But the fact that most of the group, as in your three characters, have a sort of shared quasi outsider status, as in like, at least when we were talking at the beginning of the game, there was the idea that Stephen's character is sort of viewed as an outsider, whether or not they actually are. There's the center of the self aspect, which is speaking about an outsider, and then of course the cult who is speaking about the intellectual. And it's the game, at least early on, we're talking about, it seemed to have a concept of like, oh no, the world's going to end. So there's an apocalypse cult aspect. So almost everyone's character, whether pushing for it or against it. So I found myself thinking, well, are we leaning into that? In which case we're all, in some degrees, dealing with the friction between society, or do we need my character to literally be someone who's much more bulwarky? Someone who's much more mainstream society.
Yeah.
My kind of idea of her, if we go that way, is that I had the idea of actually. Sorry, in terms of the shared fate, Stephen, you had an idea there.
Oh yeah, and I was going to say that, to a degree, being a Knight of the Order of the Stars means that you're always going to be an outsider to the people to some degree, because you're basically acknowledging that there are problems in the society, and that there are, for the most part, everybody's just kind of like, oh, some demons came along and snatched up hundreds of people. I mean, that's not really a problem, is it? Mm. They didn't snatch up anyone I knew.
Right. And there's still lots of people left.
Yeah.
Well, I'm all meant that everyone, even inside the Order of the Stars, I sense most of the characters as described are outsiders in the Order of the Stars.
Yeah.
That's the thing. As in, we've got no one who's actually the conservative knight.
But no, yeah, you could if you want. That, I mean, if that's something that interests you.
Like the sort of if we go that way, I'll probably end up grabbing Renowned Champion as well. As an idea, I'm the Lancelot figure, but I had an idea of inverting the kind of Lancelot myth, and it's not quite this, but like my Guinevere or Lancelot.
I do like how I'm playing not the outsider, and you pick the Frenchman.
I know. Everyone else, literally, the fact that I was also thinking about that kind of Lancelot. And no, everyone else is Lancelotting it up. But I've got the kind of core awful romantic. I meant much more the romantic nature of Lancelot, and the kind of the core concept is my partner. We're going to be together was the thing, and he went off to try to find essentially the Holy Grail to cure whatever awful disease he had, and he's come back as a demon again and again and again, and that's her fate, the mistaken bride. As in it's a demon that keeps on coming back in the form of my presumably dead lover, and I have to kill him again and again and again. And so I'm the sort of the heroic Lancelot Paragon Knight figure, but I have to keep on. I'm mainly known as this Demon Slayer because I primarily am killing my ex all the time. And there's something like that, at the same time being this very conservative figure because she's a Demon Slayer, that's what she does. But at the same time, having there's clearly a tension there that matters because it's always we need to be together in hell aspect of it. So that's the kind of core sort of idea I was playing with her. Yeah,
and that actually it plays very well into giving you opportunities to roll to advance, because you get to roll whenever you fail to display the knightly virtues, which in this case is defending the people and not sympathizing with demons.
That's fun. That definitely is the conflict there, as in having hers be her main stuff is internal rather than having the societal problems facing her, I guess. I'll work it out. But that's the core concept. So I'll have two. So that's the other rule question I had to ask, actually. Presumably, we're getting a second fate as well as the one I've just added myself.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah,
and the book does recommend that, like, in terms of picking starting aspects, like picking, like, if you're lacking an idea, picking something from Offices or Fate is a good choice because it gives you a clear narrative direction to begin with.
Cool.
But I mean, I was kind of thinking about throwing out there, because like a whole bunch of the group is sort of oriented southward, if there was like a shared relationship with something like the Southern Prince, who has appeared at the edges of our lands with an army in tow. Are they a minion of the demons, or are they a potential ally, or are they simply an invader? But that's something, like, I was a random thought.
Yeah.
I like it. The sort of role that I think my character has in my mind, Andromeda, is that she's kind of a circuit rider. Her special thing is a rare mount whose name is Guinevere. And it basically runs on the air. Where it puts a foot down, a little golden disc appears, and where it picks its back foot up, it chatters into a shower of light. And so she's very good at getting around very fast, and her job is as she views it, is as much as to kind of patrol the borders of the civilized areas, looking for trouble like this. So the idea of a southern force that is looming, that might be an invader, is a very I think works very well, and I like it.
Yeah, and we leave the Southern Prince somewhat. I mean, we'll, I think, in play find out more about this prince, right? I mean, that we're not gonna flesh him out too much right now.
Does that work with you though, Kieran?
Yeah, that's great. I've just I said I'm the person who knows the system least, so I'm just trying to work out how that works as a fate in play, as in what that would work like.
It could be like the way you would tag it is that, like, for example, ways it could help you is that you are interacting with the Southern Prince in some way. You're turning to them for aid. And you could add them to any of your cosmos. Like, perhaps for you, the Southern Prince is the Mistaken, but the Southern Prince might be the new moon or full moon on someone else's sheet. But on the other hand, the way that, relationships are probably the easiest of the aspects to define, because really either side can really evoke it as long as they're in the scene, really. Because maybe you're saying, well, they're my enemy, so I fight against them all the more hard. Or the Mistaken could also say, well, they're your enemies, so of course they also are fighting you against you all the more hard. Things like that. It's like basically there's something you could evoke when you're in a scene with them, or perhaps when you're inspired by them in some way.
Do we want to give the prince a name? Or do we just refer to him as the Prince of the South?
I mean, I think I kind of like that idea, because, like, that's the only one that we know of.
The Prince of the South. I think the Prince of the South is his name.
Yeah, it's like when they come in and there's just like the Green Knight. Like, we don't need to give him a name. He's just the Green Knight.
Well, I mean, right, and Andromeda has a name, but she's often referred to as the daughter. because there's one daughter of the morning star. I mean, it's a title.
Mm.
And so most people who talk about her just say the daughter. And so it makes perfect sense for her to say, "Oh, it's the Prince of the South." The Prince of the South. That's who they are.
I think we have an interesting theme about titles here, because obviously I've lobbed the name of the groom down as the groom. You know what I mean? Like, and everyone knows when they say the groom, they mean that demon who comes out of hell and tries to, you know, drag me back there. You know, and like, there's something quite interesting about the concept of duty, and you know, just.
What's your character's name?
I haven't got a name. I haven't got a name for her yet, actually.
I'm feeling a strong draw between Andromeda and your character. I mean, just an if only kind of, you know, familial or love thing.
Yeah.
Someone who wants very much to interrupt your cycle somehow.
Yeah. Obviously, the level of the kind of, I think anyone near me, I feel that is doomed as well. So that's the classic Arthurian. We cannot possibly be together because my demon X will probably burst.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Also, and also, I've got a horrible pull on my own because I'm supposed to be, you know, I've got a title in my order, and you know, the dictates of my order are supposed to supervene everything, but of course they don't.
Yeah.
You know, when I get a, you know, I put as my full moon the leader, you know, the leader of the order, because I'm in a hierarchy, and I don't know who my mistaken is really. I just put a name. I just threw a demon's name in there for no reason, but I don't know who they are yet. So I'm up for changing that.
I'll give her a name in a minute. I'm just going for the various options. The idea did just occur to me that everyone from the south, if we actually meet them, they should have names after rocks. Like if we're going to go, the south is the opposite of the, you know, rock names instead of star names.
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of think about who my mistaken would be. Whether because it strikes me it could be some character from the south.
I mean, it could be the Prince of the South.
Right,
yeah,
he's the invader. I mean, whether it's a real military invasion or just some cultural and, you know, infringement, could still well be your mistaken.
Okay. And then I'm wondering with a new moon, it could be interesting if, I mean, presumably I've perhaps made me and the people of this order of the Sentinels of the Southern Lands, you know, makes sense that we maybe have made some tentative you know, forays to do some reconnaissance to the south. And I was wondering if with the new moon, maybe I've actually met somebody from the south, and we've struck up some type of tentative friendship. And that would be maybe somebody who maybe it is a would it be a warrior from the south, or
I have to say this because it's the most melodramatic, and I've gone straight to Arthurian melodrama, so I apologise. But it's like whoever the prince's lover is. It would be my melodramatic suggestion for that moment.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I went straight melodramatic as well. I put for the new moon the Prince of the South, who I love, but I don't know if this is okay. Like, would this be interesting to you if I put the Morning Star as my mistaken? Brandon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Do you the whole order?
No. The morning, like the. Oh, I thought that like there was like an actual morning star as well that was part of your like faith.
We should decide. What's the most interesting? Is the morning star just the sun newly come, or do we see, or do we believe that there is another entity that is the herald, that was the herald that we could see before the sun came?
Yeah, I'll go with the morning star, the herald
Okay,
of the sun.
the morning star. Okay, so yeah, so our cult believes that the sun's coming was heralded, and that's when the cult sprang up, and he said, the sun is coming and everybody has to get ready.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And then when the sun actually did come, some people thought that we were prophets, and other people thought that we must be in horrible league with demons and other worldly things in order to know these unknowable things.
So does the morning star then? I mean, is it incarnated as a human or as a demon?
The morning star, as I originally conceived it, up for grabs, is a heavenly body. It showers its blessings on those people who believe it, and it's possible that the morning star could incarnate. Yes, and to have an incarnate aspect.
I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of an implication that we're all actually incarnate aspects of stars as well, particularly in the expansion book where people can play black holes. Well, in that one you play like kind of doomed time travelers, because the moment is caught forever in your like gravitational pull, forever extended outwards, and so you're always trying to change things but can't. But yeah,
Fascinating.
But no, I do.
So what's the most
I like the
interesting,
idea of what was that?
So what's the most interesting, Stephen?
I mean, yeah, I'm interested in the idea that the morning star holds a great court within the mistake among demons and those people who have turned away from the people.
I think that's great. I think that the idea that, yes, that the morning star, which is a heavenly body, has incarnated, and is within the mistake, and is trying to lead the entities of the mistake towards righteousness. Possibly a quixotic endeavor.
Okay.
I want to add like something like patriarch or matriarch of one of the cities as a full moon relationship. The idea of just to sort of lead into the establishment of it. So the establishment nature of Heka a little. The idea of having some kind of powerful relationship with this kind of, which is my immediate urge is to make it the person related to the groom, like essentially the mother, either the mother or father-in-law. But like the fact that's a full moon relationship strikes me as that says something awful about the relationship between the groom and the whoever the remaining parent is, I guess. Mm-hmm. Essentially, I'm looking for an alpha figure, I guess. Like, so that's the I've completely gone for the Excalibur, by the way. You made the mistake of mentioning it. Is there a preference for like which one of the 4 cities we're talking about being based in? Not cities, but remnants.
Yeah, because technically these were all basically just sort of suburbs to the actual city of Polaris. And then the mistake happened, and now there's just a crater where Polaris was, and only these little bits of the city remained.
Tall Star is in larger type than the others. Does that mean it's
so it's
bigger?
more important, clearly.
Yeah, and it's got a different name. It must be that'll make it slightly easier. My brain tends to like wipe out names which are too close together. But Southwatch, Southreach, and Southkeep is a disaster waiting to happen for my head. So I will remember Tallstar. I swear.
Yeah, I think it's Tallstar. Yeah, the others sound like sort of fortified outposts.
Yeah, I do wonder what was
Although Southwatch, they do all sound like the ones that border on the south, don't they? And Tallstar is kind of removed from the frontier a little bit. It's like, safe from those potential awful Southerners.
I had, for my full moon, had put initially Captain of the King's Guard, Scutum, but maybe I'll make that Captain of the Matriarch's Guard. Would that be more interesting?
Sure.
Sure.
I think I'm going to go with I have a very sort of vague emotional concept for Mistaken, which is a character named Nyx, who is a demon, and who is in a way my own personal demon, who seems to have taken it as their job to try to break my faith. And to show why, where that this society is corrupt, beyond redemption.
Do they appear to you in the form a monstrous form, or do they have the appearance of one of the people? At least. Okay.
They appear as a beautiful person. Probably is a handsome man.
Mm-hmm.
Handsome, soft-spoken. Who points out, the awful things people do. Highlights them and brings them, to my attention when I'd really rather not know about them. Do people think that's interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds. Do you have a sense of why you specifically are being targeted?
Well, I feel I'm being targeted because of my office, because I have a crucial part to play. But it's probably also something I did. I unleashed this demon through the destruction of something that which seemed to be right at the time. Something which seemed to be a source of darkness, but in the process, I let this demon loose. And so I'm responsible for it.
Searching for a new moon.
Yeah, I'm playing over some new moon ideas, but yeah. I've had a couple. I had a couple. Then I've just rejected. I've decided I don't want to. It's too much for me. I don't really. I was going to go. I was thinking about lone. I was thinking about lone wolfing cubbing it.
You could. I mean, if you could make it reciprocal, and include Andromeda.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but I wanted to.
Well, the new moon should specifically be NPCs. They shouldn't be other heart characters.
Okay.
In the cosmos, at least. These are These are where you note down NPCs.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Well, the relationship.
If you want to have that relationship, it's fine, but it doesn't matter to the cosmos, because this is mostly for deciding who is playing what which GM-ful role is controlling which character.
All right. So my new moon will be Vulpecula then, who is my younger sister, and who is not a member of the order.
So why don't we go around now with and do just a kind of summary of characters, and we will also use a key phrase at the start of this. So one of the general key phrases is the one that gets used each session to introduce a protagonist. So like the next session, when your protagonist is first makes an appearance in a scene in the next session, they'll always use this this key phrase. So I'll go in and do this for and this appears on that phrase sheet. It's the second one that's bulleted. So I would say for my character, but hope was not yet lost for Akamar. For hope was not yet lost, for Akamar still heard the song of the stars. So my protagonist's name is Akamar, and he is, in addition to being a knight of the Order of Stars, he is also part of an elite force called the Sentinels of the Southern Lands, who have been kind of tasked with keeping an eye on the Southern Lands, sometimes doing reconnaissance missions to the Southern Lands. And he was kind of tapped for this role by the character who is in the Full Moon section, Scuttum, captain of the Matriarch's Guard. He kind of, Akamar, I imagine in the past, was, initially being kind of groomed to be part of the Matriarch's Guard, but Scuttum kind of seeing Akamar, recognizing that he was a more physically imposing person, kind of tapped him to be in this elite force. My mistaken is the Prince of the South, because of course, as the Sentinels of the Southern Lands are most keenly focused on that figure from the South, who they are treating with some well, I mean, are not just keeping an eye on him, but are seeing him as a it's like, we have the demons coming out of the mistake, but now we have this this is like the figure who is really seems to be the one who is guiding these forces from the South. And in terms of the new moon, I have Xania, who is a woman from the South, who Akamar is in a relationship with, but she is also in a relationship with the Prince of the South as well, which is certainly going to create some challenges, I would imagine. So I'm just going to go to the right on the jam board. And Kieran, do you want to tell us about your protagonist?
Sure. Let me just quickly find the key phrase. But hope was not let lost. For Hector the Bride still heard the song of the stars, no matter how distant it sometimes felt. She was married to Ursa the Groom, and they were a golden couple. They were two of the greatest knights of their generation, astounding fighters. There was a romance, an epic romance, which was on. Kind of imagine like 1982 in the UK with the Princess Diana thing, as in there's a complete buying into this kind of weird public romance of these two figures. Libra, matriarch, famous, hater of all things demons, hater of most things, full stop. bless them. Everything's going well. We are blessed with a child, Capella. And then Ursa was struck by an awful sickness. He said he'd travel forth in search of something that could possibly heal him. He returned as a monster, as a demon. I killed him. And then it returned again and again. And this has basically been the rhythm of Heka's life. And there is the fundamental sense that perhaps the monster is also going to come for the daughter as well. That's definitely a kind of like whatever the monster wants, whatever Ursa the groom wants to do now has something to do with the daughter in this way. It's the whole family needs to be together in the mistake. I don't like that. As I said, I'm a famed champion. Libra, I am the leading knight of Libra, her personal right-hand thing. I've come very close to my family-in-law, including Till, who's the husband of Libra, who I am very close to in terms of the not yet an affair, but if it wasn't the fact that he was my, it's the full-on kind of parental kind of. He is basically my Guinevere in this metaphor, but nothing's happened yet. It's everything's very honourable, everything's very decent so far. And that's the situation where she finds herself, essentially pursued by demons, sent forth into awful fights, and eventually, clearly somebody is going to be heading south to interact with the Prince of the South at some point. Oh, Capella means goat, she-goat, by the way, which is what the daughter's named.
Okay. And Brandon, you want to go next?
But hope was not yet lost, for Andromeda still heard the song of the stars. Andromeda is the daughter of the morning star, and she is the champion of the cult that claims to have heralded the sun, and whose aspect exists in the mistake and is trying to bring redemption to this corrupt world that we have, even as the sun's light shines upon us. The Andromeda means the sacrifice, and that is deliberate, as it is viewed that likely that that her life will probably be the coin in which redemption is purchased. If not now, then soon. Her major role is to find places where the corruption currently is leaking through and destroy them. So she rides to places in the realm that are hard to get to on her extraordinary steed, who, as I said, appears to be a horse that can run on the air. Her senior is, of course, the morning star, the herald of the sun, who communicates to her sometimes in what appears to be person, and sometimes in vision or dreams. But it is always manifest when it is truly them, and she is bound to obey or be forsworn. Her antagonist is Nyx, who is a demon, who appears as a handsome, soft-spoken man who points out that corruption is inevitable, and that for every event that is stopped up, metaphorically speaking, two new leaks form, and that there is in fact no saving this society, and that the people who are involved, people who who the order is allegedly supposed to save, do not desire to be saved and are not helping at all in their own salvation. And would it not be better just to allow them to go to the path of their own destruction and salvage something else? Nyx seems to be her own personal demon, and that it seems to trouble her and not anyone else that she has yet heard of. But it's possible that just no one else is telling her. Her new moon is her younger sister, Vulpecula, who she calls Little Fox, and has since they were very young, notwithstanding that her sister has grown up to be something important. I don't know what it is. Any suggestions are open. She is not a member of the cult. The last important thing for the moment is that she is in love with, in some wise, it's not necessarily physical, with Heka, and desires to pull Heka out of her spiral towards disaster that she sees. There's the recurrent fights with her, with the groom, and her being drawn towards, possible, love and betrayal. And she wants very much to do to somehow prevent that from happening, to save Heka from her own disaster.
I forgot to mention, actually, I'm very up for that. But I sort of see Heka viewing Andromeda as they're sort of my best friend, as in we're very close, and you're a very positive influence in my life. And I don't think I'm aware of the fact that you want something more yet.
Well, Andromeda's not ready to admit that either.
Yeah, cool. I love that.
She just feels that if Heka were to, where Heka goes, she goes, and if Heka is destroyed somehow, that will destroy her. She is helplessly in love with her in some ways, and hasn't admitted to herself how deeply that goes. So,
okay.
Anyone who wishes to suggest what Vulpecula's role in the world is perfectly welcome. But that's Andromeda.
Okay, and Vulpecula, I'll give some thought to that but yeah, we can, if we don't have an idea now, we can definitely, during the course of play, kind of flesh out a little bit more what her role is. Okay, and Stephen?
Yeah, but hope was not yet lost, for Alshane still heard the song of the stars. Yeah, I am playing Alshane, he, him. Actually, let me just add that to the part tab here. Alshane is a member of the Aquile family, who, as we went over in character creation, is a family that is viewed as foreigners to the remnants, due to some intermarriage between the matriarch of the Aquile and a stranger from the south some generations past. I think that there is a kind of, particularly under the most recent matriarch, Talmain, there's been an attempt to claim a precedence as one of the great families of the Tall Star remnant, which I think that. Yeah, I think that I'll maybe add it as a character somewhere. But I think that I fled an arranged marriage to sort of cement alliance among the families and became a knight of the Order of the Stars instead, angering my my mother and matriarch a bit. But she is my full moon relationship. Beyond that, I think that I've had an encounter where we have at times locked blades ourselves, at times locked blades with demons alongside each other. But I am drawn to the Prince of the South, who burns like the sun, hot and beautiful and dangerous. And I view as my mistaken the morning star, who I think I view them as in some way they have ventured into the mistake, which I know my ancestral compass is also points me towards. I think that their quest is a threat to all of the remnants. That they will ignite a second mistake and perhaps drag us all down into the crater among the demons.
Good one.
This all sounds quite delicious
and yes, and the right, yes, and the Prince of the South, clearly there is something reciprocal going on there, although exactly what is hard to see. Sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be learned about who that Prince of the South is. More
and what they want. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What I'm thinking of doing now is going a little bit more than into how this game will operate. And for this, I will be making some references to the key phrases, and also there's a spreadsheet that is in the shared folder as well, which kind of really, I like that spreadsheet a lot. It's not part of the, at least the version that I got did not have that flow chart in it, but I think that the flow chart is pretty useful. So during the course of the game, we will be playing out scenes. When a scene begins and when a scene ends, there's this key phrase, "and so it was." That's kind of like the curtain moving, that "and so it was" phrase to begin and end scenes. The protagonist and the mistaken can call for scenes, so that they are the ones that can use those, can use that phrase. The moons, like if a moon is thinking about a particular protagonist and says, "Oh, I have a great idea for a scene that would involve that protagonist," the moon can certainly make a suggestion for a scene. But when and this is in the bottom right of that flow chart, that if one of the moons makes a statement that would kind of get a scene started for a protagonist, then the ultimate decision lies with the protagonist and that protagonist's mistaken. Okay, so
yeah, a good way to think about the roles is that the moon's job is to advance interesting ideas into a scene, but ultimately the ones that decide what is happening in the scene are the heart and the mistaken.
Right. So if the moon makes a suggestion, you know, if either the protagonist either the heart or the mistaken doesn't like the idea, they can just return with the key phrase, but it was no matter. But if either one of them says the other phrase, we shall see what comes of it, then that brings the scene into being. Okay, so if either the protagonist or
it doesn't bring a scene into being. That's just for conflict.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
You could basically, a scene is free play. Everybody just says what they do until somebody does something that another player doesn't want to happen or thinks is happening too easily.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, according to this, it says any player may start a scene for either their heart character or their mistaken character, right? And following that with a brief description.
Right.
Yeah.
So moon statements can engender a conflict, but they don't start a scene. If I understand correctly.
Well, what I'm saying is that, like, for the most part, most of those statements only come up when a conflict starts. You don't necessarily open a scene on a conflict.
Right. Okay.
You can, but it's not required.
Okay. Yeah, but then when if during a scene a conflict emerges, and what he says about a conflict, it's a conflict would be a situation where you think, oh, this would be difficult, or it could be something where you are opposed to it, or where you think that some kind of price needs to be paid for that. Those would be the kinds of things that would trigger a conflict.
Yeah, and I think what's kind of helpful to think about here is that for the most part, like, it's the job of your opposite. If you're the heart, it's the job of your mistaken to place costs on things. And in the same way, if you're playing the mistaken, it's the job of the heart to place costs on things. So something that I've seen players fall into the trap of this game is that they start negotiating even like on their opposite's behalf, even before they take an action. If you're playing the heart, just say what you do. Like, just say, if you want to kill this demon, say, I swipe his head off. It's the job of the mistaken to say, no, that's too easy. I'm going to place a cost on this. Right.
Yeah, and the game, definitely wants you to be driving for those kinds of conflicts. And the new moon and full moon being there to kind of offer suggestions, but your opposite, he does a number of times in the book say you don't want to negotiate really with your opposite, right? The opponent, right, should be the one that you are really pushing. Okay, so when
and the corollary to what Stephen had said is that that the protagonists are viewed as basically competent within their sphere, and so if they are doing something where there is not a major opposition, difficulty, or price to be paid, then they just do it.
Correct. Yeah. Now when a conflict starts, then you have a number of other of these key phrases that comes into play.
Yeah.
And
we should note, though, before we get into that, what starts the conflict is that, because that's an important key phrase to keep in mind. That generally, once someone has narrated something that you want to stop for a moment and say, well, I don't want that to happen, or I think it's happening too easily, there are a couple key phrases you can jump into, right?
Are you thinking about like the but only if?
Yeah, like but only if, or also a few others. But sorry, go ahead.
Are they the ones in the flowchart here, Stephen?
Yeah.
But only if, and furthermore, you ask far too much, etc.
Yeah.
Right.
So the
Those are the
conflict
ones
phrase,
where you're saying, I want to stop free play now, and we're going to go into conflict. That any of those phrases can be used to start that.
so
Right.
just to confirm, so the conflict phrase is the phrase that someone had said that you believe needs to be modified, or
Well, like
countered.
anything that they state in free play, like like in my earlier example, say that someone says I cut the demon's head off. Now there are a lot of ways you could take that. Like maybe you could say somebody could say you ask far too much to say that, well, I don't think you can just cut the demon's head off. Say that you do something else, and then I'll pick which of the two to go with.
Right.
Or that, but only if, which is, okay, you can cut the demon's head off, but only if you also do, if this thing also happens.
Right. Yeah. So either the heart or the mistaken can initiate the conflict by using one of those initial phrases on the flow chart, right? Like, oh, but only if, or, and furthermore. And it also says that the moons may not initiate a conflict, but they could draw attention to the fact that, oh, right, this sounds like a conflict is happening.
The moons can also set up a conflict because, like you said, even though anything that the moons say can be overridden by either the moon or the heart, if it gets overridden, like say, for example, in like looking at mine, somebody says that Altalmain like exiles me from the family. And I might say, well, I don't really like that happening. I'm going to say that that doesn't happen. The mistaken can pick up and say, well, actually, I'm interested in seeing that happen. So I'm going to pick it up as if I said that phrase. And so that's a way that the moons can still push forward conflict, even if they can't force it mechanically.
Right. One thing I want to point out on the flow chart is that some of the phrases have asterisks by them. And my understanding is that asterisk means that you have to point to one of your aspects as coming into play. And another role that the moons can play is being the kind of referees of the conflict, right? And the moons, you know, would say, yeah, that makes sense, that aspect that you know, you're fighting a demon and you're going to use your starlight sword, and of course, right, that can come into play. So, like, if you want to, I initially was baffled by the, you know, but only if statement seemed a lot like the and furthermore statement. But while they are in some ways similar, you know, to use the and furthermore statement, you have to use one of your aspects that then gets exhausted until it gets refreshed.
Yeah.
And it also limits the responses, right?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that
only if is basically the other player can always choose to say, actually, I'm fine with the last thing I said not happening, and what you just said doesn't happen either. They can always back out. And furthermore statements they can't.
Correct. Yeah. A lot of these phrases are somewhat self-explanatory. Like if you're fine, if you're involved in the conflict, and you know, you're either the heart or the mistaken, and if your opponent makes a statement and you're kind of fine with the way that is, you can always say, and that was how it happened, right? And that just brings all the statements up to that point then are accepted, and the conflict ends at that point.
Yeah, and that's sort of one of the three kind of end states of that a conflict can end in.
Right. Now, you can say, it shall not come to pass, which would bring it to an end, but this will involve a dice roll. Okay, and that's where you'll roll a six-sided dice. You'll roll a six-sided die, and there would be some determination as to, first of all, whether the roll involves more of the social sphere or whether you are relying more on your kind of own internal strength. Okay. If what you're doing seems like more it's involved with the social sphere, you would take the ice number and try to roll equal to or under that number. And if it was more of like your personal valor or something like that that was coming into play, you would roll the light number. And then depending on who says it shall not come to pass, there is going to be an advantage or a disadvantage to the roll. So if I'm playing the heart and my opponent says it shall not come to pass, then, and Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think then if it's my opponent who says that, I get to add my zeal.
Yes.
If I said it, then I would have to subtract my weariness.
Yes. So, like, depending on how nice of a mistaken you want to be, like, you can choose to end the conflict earlier and give the knight a bit of an advantage.
Right. Right. So
yeah, there's everybody comes to an agreement. I'm fine with all the statements that happen. And I should note for that roll, basically the it shall not come to pass is only about whether that last statement comes into effect.
correct.
Everything else has been agreed upon at that point. And this last roll determines whether this last thing happens and whether the knight succeeds or not.
Right. One other phrase is the "you ask far too much," and if you use that again, that has the asterisk, so there has to be some aspect that would be called into play. And if you invoke that one, then the opponent has to give you another option, and it has to be a distinctively
either different or lesser.
Yeah, either different or lesser option. So right, it goes back to the opponent, and they have to come up with some other alternative, and then the person who said you asked far too much chooses between those two options.
So as an example, I could say that, like, as, say, a mistaken for Brandon, someone might say, well, I think the demon lashes out and kills Little Fox. And Brandon probably will say, well, I don't like that happening. I'm going to say you ask far too much. And I could do a couple things. Maybe, for example, the demon injures Little Fox. But maybe instead I might say that Little Fox turns on you and looks stony-eyed and says, I am going with them. Move Vulpecula to your mistaken.
Right.
So there are different ways. Like, basically it's asking, but then always afterwards, the person that asked and furthermore can actually just keep asking and furthermore as long as they have stuff to exhaust, and they get to pick which one to go with. Like, you're not always bound to go with like the last one said for and furthermore.
Yeah, and let me ask you, Stephen, and when they do that, does the aspect always have to be relevant to the? Yes. It does always have to, though, be relevant to the conflict that's happening. Okay.
And I should note, you don't because this is something I wanted to bring up here for how we're going to mark this. Each of the you don't exhaust specific aspects, even though you do need to evoke them. You exhaust your themes. So office, fate,
Okay.
and both the mistaken and the heart can exhaust particular theme once before before refreshing. So like there needs to be some way to mark that the mistaken rather than the heart has exhausted a theme, because they both get to exhaust it once.
Correct. Yeah, what I would say is that maybe we just go into the Jamboard, and if the mistaken has exhausted it, they would just they would go to that theme and type an M.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right that we will need to kind of keep track of that. And just I know that we're running up against our time. In terms of refreshing the themes, that gets into experience. And so I'll just kind of quickly summarize this. And when we get into play, I think that the experience side will become more clear. But if the heart rolls the die and loses a role in the conflict, they will get to check experience. Also, if the protagonist acts in some way that is indicative of sympathy for a demon or for the demons as a whole, or if they act in some way that shows hatred for a person or a people or the people as a whole, or if they somehow present themselves as being apathetic or callous or cynical or despairing, that would also trigger an experience roll. Okay. And this is also a place, the way the experience roll works is that the heart would roll the die again. And if they roll less than or equal to the zeal or weariness value, then that results in an advance. Okay. And you would add 1 to either your ice or your light value, depending on which one was really in play during the conflict. Okay. Now, if you fail your experience roll, then you get to refresh all of the themes for both the heart and the mistaken. So in some ways, when you're rolling for experience, you're going to get a benefit one way or another.
Yeah.
Either you're going to get all of your themes refreshed, which is kind of good for you heading forward, right? Because you have more to work with, or you don't get them refreshed, and but then instead you're going to get to advance your ice and light, but also at least initially, it means that your zeal is going to drop down. Okay, but that obviously will only come into play after we get into a scene where conflict occurs, or where some type of difficult decision is facing a knight. And I think with that, I'm thinking that might be a good place to stop.
Yeah, and I think that to kind of summarize things, because there's a lot of statements to go through here, but basically the way play flows is that we start a scene, we do free play until there's a point of disagreement. Then we do conflict, and either we agree, like everybody's fine with where the fictions flowed in the conflict. One of the two parties backs out and retracts their statement. Or one of the parties says, I want all my statements to happen, but I don't want that very last statement you made to happen, and they roll. Mm-hmm. And those are the 3 endpoints for a conflict. And then we return to free play, or we close the scene.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of the conflict, yeah, we would make a decision as to whether we're, because it very well might be the case that, you know, it's clear that at the end of that conflict, that seems like a great scene ender. But if we want to have some additional free play, we can do that as well.